of snow. It is now winter. I got one of those tractors plugged in just in case. Well, it's 19 degrees out and the wind is blowing. Good news is it blows some stuff off the driveway. The bad news is it blows and fills in other places. So I've got some work to do today. But it's too cold for me to go out and cut wood today. So I think I'm going to put another log in the fire and go upstairs into the train room. Pretty chilly up here too, so I'm going to let it build some heat. And kind of going through that changeover from the summer layout to winter. And not done by any stretch, but you know, the kind of theme is beginning to develop a little bit. Got to come up with a better concept for snow. And you can see the houses are going to have that theme as well. So my farm has been changed over, and there's another farm now. And of course we redid pretty much all the track. Put some wood underneath the entire layout, so it's much better supported, much flatter as well. And since there's less movement, the connection from track to track is now better. I've only got one section left to do, and that's this lower back section right here. I've got to put a feed on that because it drops voltage. If I wiggle the track, it comes back. It's just one of the connections, so I'll end up taking one of those pieces out and just putting a feed there. That's how that's going to work. And I did some train run video with this Scale O setup right here. I had pulled these Scale O cars with Williams power SD45s, right, in the train run video. And then I had pulled these semi-scale Reading cars with a K-Line GG1, which is really semi-scale as well, kind of short and stubby. I've got some Rail King MTH like that. I think that kind of a off-scale design was inspired by the post-war Lionel locomotives, their GG1, stuff like that. They certainly weren't scale, you know. They were made to look kind of like, not exactly like. So I think part of what I want to do today is go back and maybe visit the 027 Marx a little bit, you know. I had put a little bit of time and effort trying to find cars to make a full Marx train, and I'd been running those 666 and 1666 Marx locomotives a little bit. Can't run the 999 because it won't go across these switches. But back to Marx, you know, kind of an interesting story for me in the sense that they were never confused. They were always about building toy trains. They weren't really trying to do models. They were trying to maximize the fun per dollar. And I can attest as a young fella, just watching trains go around in circles was a form of entertainment that kept me out of trouble for hours, you know. And while Lionel was at the time going a little bit upscale, we'll show some of that, I guess, if you haven't seen it already. Marx was selling stuff like this. And I would really like, you know, I'd really like to be able to run this one, but I can't on this track because it doesn't go across the switches like I said before. So let's see what we got here. Turn on the transformers and stuff, and let's see if we can get this to move. That's as far as it goes. Now I'll help it along. And what happens is it's got this big gear. Nope. Did you short out? No, he didn't short out. It's got this big gear that is the same diameter as the outside diameter of the rim, the internal rim. Let's see if I can show you. Come on. See those big gears right there? Yeah, it just jacks the locomotive up over the contact so it comes to a stop. For contrast and comparison, you know, Lionel was selling things like this during the same period of time that Marx was selling these. And to anyone who thinks that's a scale model, you go try to find a 2.62 Pennsylvania anything, you know. And they're kind of hard to find. So Lionel was just making things work, making them look kind of like the real thing, but they weren't exactly accurate models either. Now that's a Marx 666 and pulls the same train as that Lionel did, you know, didn't it? You got to look pretty close on the camera to tell the difference in the locomotives when they're out there running around in circles. Well, maybe not really, but Lionel does look a lot nicer, higher quality and stuff like that. But that die-cast 666 still pulls that train right around that track, no problem. And I'm sure it's got a lot of miles. And then they went to the plastic ones. This has got to be in the 60s. And this is the 1666. So maybe I'll see if that can pull the same train. I'm not sure it can because this old 666 here has got some weight to it, you know. So it's got a little traction. This one doesn't have nearly as much weight, but I'm kind of curious. Let's see if it'll pull that train. I don't think so. So we begin with this 666 diecast with 1960s era cars and a 1990s era. I guess that's a S2 with later model cars from K-Line. Those are really nice cars, by the way. So, Now that locomotive right there runs surprisingly well, and it has a working light in smoke. But I was getting down around 7 volts in order to get it to run at a reasonable speed around this upper track. So it's actually pretty impressive because most of my Lionels require 9 to 10 volts. So works good. And after K-Line picked up the brand, picked up the rights to some of the tooling and trade names and the like, K-Line upgraded from these in the 90s. These are very, very common. And that can-powered truck was also common with Lionels during the same period of time. Wouldn't be surprised if they sourced the same suppliers in Asia, right? Well, K-Line went from those to this class of locomotive. And these are on par with anything that Lionel, MTH, or Williams was selling at the time in terms of the powertrain with their twin vertical cans, die cast everywhere, and metal gears, and all the things they did during that period of time. This is a really nice running locomotive right here. My only problem with this is that these leading trucks are a little bit light. So on the lower track I have, if there's a little bump here and there, this one's a little more finicky and it's more likely to come off the track. So I usually like to run it up on the upper track. And interestingly enough, while this one here is finicky, this one here is not. It's also a K-Line. But K-Line, they went way upscale. I mean, look at these. And this was their, lower cost 027 offerings, later in their life, right? Sprung trucks, die cast, just nice cars. And I'm going to get more of these and start kind of filling out the collection a little bit of that kind of thing. And I enjoy this guy right here. I don't want to run him too much because it's got plastic gears. And the axles the gears run on, they're plastic. So I'm not sure how long it'll last. I keep it lubed up. But that thing right there, in this class of locomotive by K-Line, is quality-wise, in my mind, from the running gear, not necessarily the bells and whistles, as good as anything on the market. Now that's a semi-scale. It's nowhere near, a true scale. The GG1 is just too short, kind of stubby. But it's more in line with like MTH Rail King and Lionel semi-scale. I would say that shell design was inspired by the post-war Lionel. And Lionel wasn't interested in scale. They just wanted to make it look like one. I think that's the point. But anyway, let me put on a train. I have to use Lionel cars because I don't have a lot of K-Lines, but I'll put some K-Line cars in there to run the later ones. Yeah, and to think that they started out with toy trains like that, stamped steel or tin, evolved through the same type of technology Lionel was peddling in the MPC era and afterwards into the 90s. And then into stuff like this, which was pretty much as good as anything on the market at the time. But I think I'm going to turn this train around and put the New Haven on, because that kind of brings us up to speed, because that's my project. I've been working on that, trying to find parts to get it complete. You know, it's one of those things where part of the hobby for me is to hunt, to find things. So yeah, that's quite the evolution right there. Now I have to confess, those are MTH cars. I don't have any of the K-Line heavy passenger cars yet. And I also have to confess, I don't run that one much because of its driveline, which is mostly plastic, like the Lionels. It's all plastic. But I do have one other K-Line freight locomotive that I can put on the track. Now, the one caveat to collecting the K-Line series of trains, and actually it's not just K-Line, but pretty much any of the Asian sourced locomotives, is parts. You know, sometimes things like the motors are pretty easy to find, trucks and stuff like that. But there was a period of time where some of the castings for the side frames didn't have the right material, and they would corrode. You know, this punky white kind of a corrosion started on the inside and basically destroy them from the inside out. And that's what happened to my EP5, the one that I've been looking for parts. And there are no parts for these things. So the only solution is to find other ones that are in good condition and pirate parts for them. and that can get a little bit pricey on these things. But other than that, those later K-line locomotives and cars and stuff are really high quality. And the other thing is, like with Williams, I can often retro parts from Lionel because there were some similarities. I'm not sure yet on K-line, but since K-line was, for a period of time, a part of the Lionel organization, I'm pretty sure that some of that stuff will cross over. But I'd say really the only one I've had problems with is the EP5s. You know, I've got 2 of them now. And I need to get pilots for it. But to me, that's all part of the game, you know? So, anyway, stay warm. It's cold out there. And, yeah, it's still blowing and snowing. I gotta get out there and hop on a tractor, excavate out the yard, and stop this foolishness here. So, anyway, talk to you later. Bye for now. Yeah, they work pretty well. Yeah, here's my part stoner. By the way, they get around those tight corners. Quite impressed. Really well designed. And as a side note, those are my spares. This was new in the box and never been run. I think it got dropped or something. But I'm also starting a Facebook group. And it'll be Marx and K-line something. If you just do a search for K-line collectors or Marx and K-line collectors, you'll find it on Facebook. Hoping people will post. And also, stuff like this, you know, maybe get together people who are interested in the same stuff and horse trade parts to get things going and stuff like that. I've got a couple of these K-line catalogs which are pretty interesting. There's one of those little S2s like we were just running. And this catalog was from 1990. And then they evolved into things that looked a lot like Lionel. They eventually went way upscale. You know? And then got eaten up by Lionel.